Grant Robertson.
I am going to pick up on the questions around the increased deduction rate as well, and I also have another question for Mr Dunn in that regard. We've heard from the Green Party already in this debate their concern about the notion that this bill, and clauses 6 and 7 in particular, will allow the amount that's going to be deducted from a borrower's salary and wages to be increased from 10 cents to 15 cents if they fail to make correct deductions or they have an overdue amount. And I think on this side of the House and on the Labor Party side of the House, we can understand the motivation here. We have an interest-free loan scheme. It's a good scheme. It's allowing people to pay their loans back a lot more quickly than they previously had. And it's a scheme that was driven by the motivation of having people stay in New Zealand, and we're extending that in this bill to the realm of New Zealand, and that's good, so that people would contribute to the New Zealand economy. So it had two purposes, and we understand that those purposes are important, and that this change in fact backs up the notion of saying that it's important to stay in New Zealand and will create those incentives to do that. I do note that clauses 6 and 7 will give the Commissioner of Inland Revenue the right to make judgment calls about this, which is what my colleague Mr Hipkins was speaking about before. And they will be very important and significant judgment calls for some people. And I've had a particular case in my electorate office this year of a couple who went to the UK and didn't make repayments while they were away overseas, came back to New Zealand and for a variety of reasons had some issues with making further repayments. And in some senses this change would offer them a path for how repayment could be made. So, in fact, there is actually a positive side to this. But my question for the Minister and the Chair is around how this change will be promoted. Because one of the big issues we've had with the scheme is people simply being unaware of what was required of them, particularly when they went overseas. And a lot of time, people would ring up electorate offices. They would, and when I worked for the Student Association many years ago, they would ring up simply unaware of what the requirement was when they were overseas. And initially the scheme required you to pay back $1,000 a year or 1/15 of your income while you're away overseas, and people had difficulty making those kind of adjustments and arrangements to their affairs. So my question for the Minister really is, having understood the logic of giving the Commissioner of Inland Revenue the right to make these increases in the deduction rate, what will be done to ensure that people are aware of that, they understand what their obligations are, and understand perhaps something of the criteria for how the Commissioner will make those judgments? I think it's very important because already we see that there is an ability to reduce the payment if it's going to cause serious financial hardship. That's good. That's an important caveat to put on this. But we don't want ourselves in a situation where we have a large number of people who are going to be going overseas unaware that this could happen to them if they don't meet their obligations at the other end of the scheme. So I look forward to the Minister taking a call on that and giving us some further information. Another of the technical amendments that I want to draw some attention to is the hardship relief clauses 19, 20, 21 and 22. And I think this is something where the government does deserve to be congratulated. We have seen a number of situations in which people do find it very difficult, and actually, ironically, it's the same couple that came to see me. This could have been a legitimate area that they could have benefited from, because the issues and problems that they had with their income actually weren't happening in the immediate year that they were seeking relief. And so I think the hardship relief clauses are an important amendment to the scheme. Because I don't think we should fool ourselves that the student loan scheme is a complete panacea when it comes to supporting students through their study. The student loan scheme actually puts a very serious obligation on those people who borrow from it. They have to pay back at 10 cents in the dollar, and if they don't meet their repayments after this bill is passed, it'll be 15 cents for some, up to 15 cents for some people. That is a serious obligation, and it brings me back to the comment I made in the second reading when Stephen Joyce said that they were going to be looking at different aspects of the scheme. They need to tighten up some of the rules, and he made the comment that this loan was unlike others because it didn't have an incentive to pay back. Well, that incentive is the 10 cents in the dollar, and I think the hardship provisions that are in this bill, which effectively loosen those hardship provisions, are a very important response to the fact that 10 cents in the dollar over $19,000 have to be paid back. $19,000 is a very small amount of money to be earning and then paying back. So the hardship provisions provide an ability to make the student loan scheme a lot fairer. And I think, as I say, the government deserves to be congratulated because it has brought this up. But we need to ensure that we don't underestimate the importance of some people having access to those hardship provisions, because if you are earning $20,000, it will be difficult.
Stuart Nash.
Thank you, Mr Chair.